Hello, I'm Anthony. Historically, I've had very little interest in learning other people's music. The reason for that is pretty well documented, it's discussed elsewhere, but basically I don't play with other musicians, so I have very little need to learn other people's music because I'm never going to play it. It's becoming increasingly apparent to me, however, that I'm really tying my hands behind my back by not learning other people's music, because you get to stand on their shoulders, you get to stand on the shoulders of giants, as the phrase goes. Today we're going to talk about a particular, it's my favourite solo and my favourite moment from Pink Floyd's The Wall album, an album that I'm not actually that fond of. There are quite a lot of songs on it that I just find hugely overblown, and I don't generally tend to listen to it as a whole thing. But there are individual pieces of music in it that are transcendently beautiful, and the solo from Mother is my favourite moment. I've been using that as a practice exercise over the past couple of weeks and trying to extract as much musical DNA as I possibly can. I'm going to play the solo for you now without any backing for obvious reasons, and then we're going to deconstruct it and find out just how magical it is and why David Gilmour is such a genius. So what can I learn from that solo when I'm going to come to construct my own music? Well, the first thing that should be pretty obvious is that the entire guitar fretboard is one homogeneous zone as far as David Gilmour is concerned. He seems to have no interest in the caged system. All notes are considered equal. We're going to break it down shortly and have a look at the specific phrases, but basically the solo's in G major. There are two places where a single chromatic note, the D sharp, is played, so that note isn't in scale. Everything else is. It doesn't sound like it's played in a major key, it sounds like it's played in some, I don't know, slightly more exotic modal pattern. It's simply G major. As I'm going to demonstrate, there's nothing fancy about the notes that are being played. It's how they're played, where they're played, and how we transition from one phrase to another that really separates David Gilmour from everybody else. So right at the very beginning of the solo, tonic up to bent fifth. So we've got there's our fifth chord. So we're going to get up to this D, but we're going to get there via a bend. Immediately, you know you're listening to David Gilmour. We've only played two notes, and it's already iconic stuff. Now, if I'm very careful with how I approach these things, it could not be simpler. A two-note lick, and I'm already away. Coming down to the major third there. So I'm bending down 5, 4, 3. And then we've got our first chromatic note. It's always the same. The D sharp is the note that's going to get played. And it's just a passing note. The pull off to the D sharp is an entirely incidental thing. But these are the moments, these are the glorious things that you're looking for. So what's that? Well, the E is the sixth of the scale. And I'm pulling down to, well, it's either an augmented fifth or a flat sixth. Does it really matter? It's just a chromatic note. So all of the stuff so far has been up around the 12th fret, and this is where we've started our solo. Where are we going to go next, David? Where's your next phrase coming from? Well, how about we go right down to the bottom of the guitar? And we have a big, fat, juicy slide up to a skipped note. So what are we playing here? We're going from E up to C, the sixth up to the fourth. You see a very similar pattern to this actually in the Shine On You Crazy Diamond solo. He likes doing this skipped string bend with slide downs. It's really, really simple chromatic stuff. But because of the places, the locations that he's playing on the fretboard, these are not standard patterns. These aren't the things that you see when you learn scales from a textbook. Just sounds utterly glorious. I put that phaser on, by the way. There's a phaser on this sound specifically to take it away from the actual... I'm not trying to tone match. I'm not trying to learn the song. I don't want to learn the solo from a particular song. I'm trying to learn the phrases, so I just dialed up a sound that sounds good to me. So we're sitting now pretty heftily on this perfect fifth, the D. Obviously the perfect fifth is a great place to rest, so you can stay there as long as you want. We're not going to stay there for too long though. Bending up to the fifth. I can't begin to describe how beautiful I find that phrase. This stuff, basically, you know, I've got a lump in my throat just thinking about it. So we've finished that phrase. We immediately jump up basically over an octave, and we're going to do something completely different now. We're coming back up the guitar. Another totally iconic Gilmour moment. Never mind the person. Let's pull apart the phrase and figure out what's going on. So we're starting off all the way down on A, which is the major second, and we're going to go all the way up to the D, the perfect fifth. Here's the root. We hardly have anything to do with the root during the solo. It's almost always a passing note. Bending the second up to the third. It just doesn't occur to me to bend the major second up to the third in a solo that way. Starting at the root as effectively a passing note, we're just getting there very briefly. And then we're resting up on this major third. Oh my God, once again, such a simple little 3-note phrase. You see how you get those little symmetries, those little kind of mirrored moments. It's effectively a call and response inside the phrase. And here we've actually got the other instance of the D sharp, that chromatic note. You don't think of it as a passing note. It doesn't sound in any way unusual because you have absolutely no idea you're in G major. There's almost no information to lead you to that situation, apart from the fact that you've got, big chords slamming away in the background doing that thing. But because the solo is so dynamic and flowing all over the fretboard, you've really got no anchor that requires you to subscribe to a particular pattern or set of notes. So when you hear the chromatic note, it's only after you deconstruct it and think, oh, I'm in G major, and that note there isn't in the key, so it's a passing note. Sorry, I digress. Let's get back on with it. I think he plays those notes separately, actually. I'm playing a kind of double thing, which is fine because I'm, going to use this for my own purpose, but should probably be played separately if you're kind of true to form. Where are we coming next? Well, we're going to have a classic Gilmour rake. All of these notes, once again, they're all in G major. So he's forming a chord sufficiently to allow him to do that rake musically. They're not just fluffed notes on the guitar, they're actually forming a chord underneath. I mean, they happen so briefly that it helps to kind of enhance that musicality of the phrase. But we pass over them so briefly that it's easy to kind of try to fluff that stuff. It does sound better if you form the chords. I took this notation, by the way, out of the official guitar tablature. So any criticism of the notes that I'm actually playing can be directed to the publishers, but it certainly sounds right to my ears. Anyway, where were we? And then possibly the greatest moment of genius in the entire solo comes right at the end. That's the way to play a rundown. Oh my God. It's so easy to play that in a patterned system, but by sliding down 7, 5, 4, and then coming to rest, finally on the root for the kind of the ultimate resolution. The solo is over, time to go home everyone. 32 seconds of musical genius and not a shredded note in sight. The entire thing is so slow, so languid, it's just perfect. And now I've got a whole new bunch of tools in my toolbox. I'm going to pick out those phrases and repeat them as singular phrases. I'm really trying to bed into my mind that when I'm playing a solo, don't just see the pattern. It's perfectly fine to figure out a solo from the pattern. Let's say you're playing that pattern right at the end of the solo. You might actually first come up with that phrase playing it like this. Completely standard, all part of a single pattern. And you think, right, there are my notes now. How am I going to make them sound good? Well, first of all, it sounds much better than every note being plucked. And instead of coming down here now, which I can, how about we slide? Because that's an open string, that's the right at the bottom of the string. I'm not going to come hammer off, that sounds a bit duff. But those two notes played together, I can double them up if I want. That's going to sound pretty creamy too. Glorious, glorious stuff. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. That'll do us for today. Please hit like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of this stuff. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.